Okay, now we're going to have a look at a second model. Again, an oversimplification for the sake of looking at a relationship. So we're always looking at relationships when we look at these models. Relationships between variables, between one thing and another. In this case, as I told you before, most of these models have have a name which indicates what we're going to be dealing with. So production, I told you before, all we're talking about with production is taking inputs, putting them through some sort of a process to make them into outputs. Factors of production being moved into the production process, integrated together, used together in order to produce outputs, goods and services for consumers. So production, possibilities. What are our possibilities? For example, we talked about, producing tennis rackets or badminton rackets. We're going to have so many possibilities. Our machinery may be the same for doing both of those things, but it is undeniable that if we want to produce one, we have to give up some of the other. And we're going to be looking at that relationship between really the production of two things. We're going to look at the trade-offs we have to make in one area in order to produce something else. So your book asks you to look at a simplified example where you are on an island by yourself and you have whatever tools you have your own labor, you have your time, and your production is you're going to go and collect pineapples or you're going to collect crabs. Those are your two food sources, and you're going to employ yourself by looking for those two things. So your production process is to use your labor, your tools, whatever tools you happen to have for these purposes, and go and grab the natural resources from the island, from around the island, and those two things happen to be pineapples and crabs for the sake of simplicity. So right now we can say that there's a relationship there where, obviously if I'm sitting on the island and I'm hungry, I'm going to make a decision. Either I'm going to go and harvest some pineapples, or I'm going to go and try and find some crabs, hunt crabs. But any minute I spend over here looking for pineapples is not time that I could spend harvesting crabs. And at the same time, if I go, looking to, I hate to say harvest of a living being, but really go to find or hunt crabs, if I spend time doing that, it takes away from my pineapple time. So I might be able to have both a pineapple and a crab, but there are going to be limits to that. So your book sets up, a set of data, and I've put that here. Okay, so we have, at the top, we have pineapples and we have crabs, and these are the quantities of each that we can acquire given our current level of resources. Remember our factors of production: land, labor, and capital. So land being the the resources that are available to us around the island, right? Those raw materials. Labor being our time and effort that it's going to take in order to go and do either of these things or both, and our capital being whatever tools we might have. We might have a dagger that's used for, I don't know, or a net that's used for scooping up crabs, or a dagger that's used for cutting the pineapple off of the tree. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't really know anything about hunting either, but that's the kind of thing we're talking about. We're going to take those supplies that we have, and given those resources, these are our limits. So what this tells us is that if we look along here, if we spent none of our time looking for pineapples, we could harvest 15 crabs. Let's say this is per day, per day, per day, per day. You know, it's always sort of within a frame of time. So if we devote ourselves entirely to the hunting of crabs, we can get 15 in a day. Go down here to where we have 0 crabs. So if we devote ourselves entirely to looking for pineapples, we can go and get 30. So I get up off the beach, I go and I start looking for pineapples. I'm going to get 30 in a day. That is my maximum. And then the other points in between, you know, you can see here, you know, if I want to go from 0 crabs to 8 crabs, well, then I'm going to have to give up 10 pineapples, right? If I want to get 4 more, I have to give up another 10. And if I want to get these last 3, then I'm going to have to give up another 10. Same thing happens here. If I'm getting no pineapples at all and spending all my time getting crabs, then you know, I'm going to get 15. But the minute I want to go out and get 10 pineapples, I'm giving up the time and effort that I would have spent getting crabs to the level that it's going to cost me 3. So let's go this direction, and let's just say. So what I could say there, and let's go back to opportunity cost. So if those are the only 2 options, then the way that I can express, one way in which I can express the cost of going after these first 10 pineapples is to say that I have minus 3 crabs. I am giving up 3 crabs in order to acquire those 10 pineapples. Now, if I want another 10 pineapples, look at this. So 10 more to get me to 20. This time I'm going to give up 4. Okay, so the opportunity cost of the second 10 is going to be 4 crabs. Watch another thing that happens. So if I want to move from point C to point D, I want to go out and I want to get 30 pineapples. I love pineapples so much that I don't even care. I'm going to have to give up all 8 of those. So my opportunity cost of the first 10 is going to be 3. Of the second 10 is going to be 4. Of the third 10 is going to be 8. So what we see here is that right now, already from our model and from our data, from this table, we can already see that the opportunity cost is increasing as we go along. There's an increasing opportunity cost here. Now, that could be for a number of reasons, you know, and this is something that we've noticed in economics to the point where we call it the law of increasing opportunity cost, right? The law of increasing opportunity cost says that as I go along, it's going to cost me more and more crabs in order to get more pineapples. So, you know, when I just wanted my first 10, well, I only had to give up the time it took me to look for 3 crabs because those pineapples were fairly easy to acquire. They were maybe the low-hanging fruit, the easiest fruit to acquire. So it took less of my crab time than, say, the second 10. Maybe they were a little higher up in the trees. Maybe they were at trees that were further away, that I had to travel further in order to get. So you know, as I got to the second 10, I've already harvested the low-hanging fruit. Now I'm going for the next lowest hanging fruit, and it cost me a little more crab time. It cost me 4 that time. And then when I really wanted to focus and I really wanted to get those last 10 pineapples, I had to take away more time from crabs to the point that I don't even have any time left over for crabs at all, and it cost me all 8 in order to get those last 10. So there is, from this you can see this law of increasing opportunity cost, and we do tend to find that is true. We do tend to find in production that the first part of production, our opportunity cost is lower than as we get further along, and maybe because factors get a little harder to acquire, or we have to give up a lot more in order for the production there. So we have a law of increasing opportunity cost. Now there is a calculation that we can do in here, and the calculation we like to do is about what is the cost of 1, right? So let's say when we move from A to B, so we gain 10 of our pineapples at the expense of 3. So how much is 1 going to be? Right? Okay, so there we're just going to cross multiply and then divide by 10. So x is going to be 3/10. So what can we say by this calculation? We can say that in moving from A to B, the opportunity cost of each new pineapple is 3/10 of a crab. So that's how we usually like to conceptualize opportunity cost, right? Let's look at, we can see the opportunity cost increasing. I mean, we have a sense of it, right? But in moving from B to C, we're gaining 10, we're giving up 4. So what is 1? 10x equals 4. X equals 4 over 10. So it costs us 0.4 this time. So what we can say is that if we want to express the cost of each pineapple we acquire between the production points of B and C, each pineapple costs us 0.4 crabs. So that is a way in which we can express opportunity cost. So let's get this off of here. Let's get this off. And then we'll say, okay, I'm going to just erase this, but I'm going to leave our data because then what we like to do is in economics, we very often like to show the relationship between two variables with an x and a y axis. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to give you an x-axis. I'm going to give you a y-axis and an x-axis. And let's say, we're going to put our pineapples on the x-axis, or sorry, on the y-axis, pineapples. And we're going to put our crabs on our x-axis, right? Okay. So at the point where our pineapples are 0, our crabs, our maximum production of crabs is going to be 15. Right? So we can plot that point. That's point A. Right? We can plot point D here by finding our y-intercept here. So that's 30. And this is point D. Right? And then we've got our other 2 points. Okay, well, point B, we've got 10 pineapples, so 30, 20, 10. Let's say 10 is about there. And what have we got? 12. So this is 15. So let's say 12 is about there. And so, yeah, there's point B. And then point C is going to be at 20 pineapples, 20 pineapples. And this is going to be 8, so let's put it about there. And so we're about here. So there's our C. And we can see, you know, what I'm trying to show is that there's a little bit of a curve to it. You know, it's never very accurate when we're just drawing on a whiteboard. But if you were to put this on a piece of graph paper and you were to plot it out for yourself, you would notice that there's that pattern because of this law of increasing opportunity cost. So that would be demonstrated by sort of a bowed out production possibility curve. So we're going to call this a production possibility frontier or curve. You know, you might hear me refer to it as a production possibility frontier or as a curve. A frontier in the sense that it is a barrier between 2 areas. It is not only a line connecting all these points. These are our production possibilities. You know, any combination in here of pineapples and crabs can be produced with our current level of resources. And remember that phrase, with our current level of resources, because, well, it just shows you, first of all, you know, let's say we got 10 pineapples, but we stopped at 8 crabs, right? Then we've got a point E somewhere in here. Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that at point A, or point E, we are producing 10 pineapples, but we've only gone to get 8 crabs, so there's still another 4 that we left, that we're not obtaining. We would have had the time to go and get them, but we didn't. So this is the limit of our production possibilities, so the frontier, but we didn't get to that level. We didn't get to our maximum production of the 2 goods that we possibly could have. So we call this inefficient. Anything that's in this region on the inside of the curve is going to be inefficient. What it means is that we're not fully utilizing all the resources that we have. We're lollygagging. We're taking an extra nap during the day rather than going and getting more crabs. Now, there might be a type of utility or a satisfaction that you get out of that. But, you know, as soon as we're not talking about an island anymore, and we're talking about production, and we're talking about the production within a firm of whatever that stuff is that you make to sell to the market, you want to be using your capital, your labor, and your land to its maximum efficiency. So if you're at point E, you're not doing that. Now, let's imagine here, you know, we thought today, oh, well, you know, what I'd really like is I'd like to have 20 pineapples, but I also want to have 15 crabs. So I want to, let me just erase some of this here. Yeah, so that's just called the production possibility frontier. But let's say that, okay, I've got 20, but I want to get 15 crabs. So that's point F that I've just placed outside here, outside of the frontier, right? 20 pineapples and 15 crabs. Well, what did I say earlier? I said that if I wanted to move from 20 to 30, with my current level of resources, I would have to give up those 8. I would have to produce absolutely no crabs at all. So this point F I can't even do that with my current resources. So we call that unattainable. Unattainable with the current level of resources. Right? Resources or factors of production, whatever we have in land, labor, and capital, does not allow us, and in this case it's going to be mostly labor. I can't get both 30 pineapples and 8 crabs in a day, or 15 crabs in a day. It's just impossible. In fact, if I go for these 30, according to this, I have absolutely no time for crabs. Same thing here. At 20, I can't go and get 15 crabs as well. The most I can get is 8 with my current level of resources. Now, what would happen if a second person all of a sudden showed up? Remember, I said that point F was unattainable with the current level of resources. But what would happen if, I don't know, all of a sudden I got a bigger net and I was suddenly able to scoop up all the crabs on the beach very quickly, or I learned that they sort of come up onto the beach at 5 o'clock in the morning just before the sun comes up, and I'm able to go out with my big new net and I'm able to scoop them up really quickly, and I'm able to get a lot more. I improve my technology, my technological resources. There's something that happens that improves the efficiency of my labor, the efficiency of my use of resources. Or I find more resources. So here's one. So there are a couple of things that could happen in order to make this move outwards. All of these points would change, right? So let's say, because of those new nets, all of a sudden I can get twice as many at each level. So because my maximum amount of crabs that I can get has just doubled because of my technology. So now I'm way out here at 30. So I've got a production possibility curve that's now moved outward. This is called economic growth. And that can happen for 2 basic reasons. Actually 3 reasons. One is, I'm gonna give you 2, and then I'm gonna give you a 2A, which is kind of 3. But number 1 is our new nets. That, our new nets and our new knowledge about crabs, that we know that they're all asleep at 5 o'clock in the morning and we can go and scoop them all up with a big net. So we've improved our technology. Efficiency of use of current resources. Right? This new knowledge and this new process enables me to take my same self and use the same amount of time in order to double up my work. Right? So I'm able to expand my production of crabs by a factor of 2. The other thing that can do this is, more factors of production. Right? So, a simple example, a second person lands on the island, maybe that doubles my production of crabs. Maybe it doubles my production of pineapples as well. Maybe that changes the whole curve. It all moves out. So if I suddenly have more resources, and think about it, if you're producing, tennis rackets and badminton rackets in one factory and you're plugging along, you've got your production possibilities. You've got your combinations of tennis rackets and badminton rackets you could produce, but then all of a sudden you build a second factory. One is entirely devoted to badminton rackets, one is entirely devoted to tennis rackets. You would significantly increase your production of both, because now you don't have to do the time of changing your machining. You can specialize your labor in one area, in one factory, and in the other area, in the other factory. You can benefit from specialization. You can expand the efficiency of your production, but you can also increase your production by simply adding more factors. And the third one I'm just going to add as sort of a side note is education and training. But you see, I consider that to be kind of like this, the efficiency of the use of my labor resources. So the education part. So when I said, okay, so maybe we learn about crabs that they're asleep on the beach at 5 o'clock in the morning just before the sun comes up, that's we've educated ourselves a little more in order to increase our efficiency. So education and training can sometimes be listed as a separate one because we consider, we still consider human beings to be a different type of resource, one that is capable of learning and is capable of moving along, right? When we refer to technology in economics, once again, it's going to be one of those terms where it has multiple uses in the English language, but we're going to be talking about it and saying that technology is an improvement to a process. So it may be that it's a robot, it's an AI, it's a piece of software, or a piece of electronic technology. It could be that, but it could also just be that a technology is a way of operating, of reorganizing a shop floor in order to stimulate more efficient production, to get more out of the labor that you have. And that's really what we're going to be talking about when we talk about technology. And that's sort of why I consider education and training to be sort of part of the technology, but we could list it separately, and it may, that may be part of a multiple choice question where you're asked, what are the three contributors to what we call economic growth? You hear lots of talk about economic growth is expansion of potential production. Why do I use that term potential? Because all we've done here is that we've increased the maximum production that we can have, right? We've doubled up our maximum production. That doesn't mean we're actually going to do it. Over time, we have to look at what our production is in order to map out what it actually is. But this is just our production possibility model. This shows us what is possible. So, once again, anything that's on this side of the frontier is going to be inefficient. It's going to be an underutilization of resources. And anything that's outside the possibility frontier is going to be unachievable with the current level of resources. And the only way to get there, here's our point F out here, which was previously unachievable, now is achievable because our economy has grown due to one of these factors: technology, more factors of production, more labor, more land, more capital, or education and training. Oh, well, that was a 29-minute video.